Ginny and AJ would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land across the countries now known as Australia and the United States of America. These lands that were never ceded but violently stolen from the oldest living cultures and civilization on this planet. We would also like to pay our respects to the elders past, present, and emerging, for they hold the memories, traditions, culture, and hopes of a brighter future for us all. It's also important that we acknowledge the Gomeroi, Barkinji, Lachi Lachi, Birigubba, and Waka Waka ancestors and elders of our bloodlines, whose shoulders we stand on. Without them, we do not exist. It's through them that we carry our pride, strength, and resiliency. We must always remember that under this concrete and asphalt, these countries were and always will be on traditional Aboriginal, Australian, and Native American land.
We're so excited to have you here. Welcome to the first ever episode of our podcast, Unapologetically Black. We have managed to pull all of the little pieces together and we are locked and ready to go. This episode is particularly exciting for Ginny and I. It's happened really organically, but this episode is about NADIOC. We did not plan for this. We like to look at it as a little message or sign from the ancestors that we're going in the right direction. So we're really excited to be engaging with this topic, and most importantly, the fact that it's just happened really naturally. So guys, just some brief house rules that we have, or some important facts that we want to touch on. I guess is a running theme with all of the content that we create. All of the opinions, the insight, the perspective, everything that we talk about is reflective of our own individual opinions. Now, both Ginny and myself are connected to Aboriginal communities and families, and we want to share that we're not here to represent either of those. We're not here speaking on behalf of our parents or our aunties or our mob. These are our own opinions. And this is really important because, as a lot of our Indigenous listeners will know, respect and connectedness is a vital point of our culture. And trying to represent or trying to manifest a representation of our tribes or families would just be completely unjust. And also, we want to say we have a bit of freedom. Now we are being so crystal clear that it is literally us speaking in these microphones. We have that freedom. We have that space to talk about issues that Indigenous women may have not felt comfortable to do so previously. So I'm so excited for the weeks to come, but always keep in mind that these are our own opinions and our thoughts, because everyone else is doing it. Black women can do it too.
Exactly. And I think it's important that we also just put a disclaimer out that we will be talking about lots of topics and different things, particularly about being Black and navigating these spaces. So we do need to say that some of the topics that we may talk about may be triggering and may make you upset, may make you laugh, but if it does make you feel upset, we just hope that you can come back to us at some point and join us back in those conversations. But we do just want to put it out there that some of the things that we will talk about may trigger some memories or some thoughts or some feelings, and we just want to be 100% transparent and respectful that that's what may happen. But in the meantime, welcome to Unapologetically Black with Ginny and AJ. We are so excited to have you guys tune in. We have been talking about this for a little while, about Unapologetically Black and what that looks like. And we've got a few little followers on Instagram. We want to shout out all 800 of you mob. And our 3 white followers, and say welcome. Welcome, welcome,
Welcome.
welcome, Negaman. And we hope that you enjoy the content that we have. If you are interested in sponsoring our
Mm-hmm.
podcast or providing, donating in any way,
Mm-hmm.
shape, or form, we are definitely open to those sorts of conversations. We are Black creators. We
Mm-hmm.
hope to be able to support ourselves and our content and be able to work in the same space as our non-Indigenous counterparts and be appreciated
Yeah,
in whatever that way that looks like. So if you are
definitely.
interested in having conversations with us, please slide in our DMs or email us. You
Mm-hmm.
will have all that information. Then
And just
do
touching
that.
on that again, sorry, Ginny, to cut you off,
No,
but
you're good.
guys, I want to be crystal clear. This is a labor of love. You know, this
Mm,
is not economically motivated. This is not some big pyramid scheme. This is literally two black women coming together, yarning about topics that have been put in the too hard basket, yarning about topics we haven't been provided the opportunity to talk about, if it's love or sex, romance, decolonization, heartbreak, dating, all of the
mm.
above, moving overseas, living in another country,
Mental
and
health.
mental health, yeah, and exploring blackness. Like, all of
Hmm.
these topics have not been discussed in the way that we want to. So we do want to recognize that we're coming into a new space, a new area, and that financial support from you guys will be most helpful in building and contributing with this project, because it is literally grassroots.
Literally, we are starting from the roots, honey, and we
Yeah.
hope to be up there in the trees with some of you, mob.
Mhm.
And so, if you do feel like you can provide in that space,
Mhm.
only if you can, or if you know
Yep.
someone who can, let
Mhm.
us know because we would definitely like AJ said. We know in these spaces as well, there are a lot of
Mhm.
non-Indigenous mob who create, and so we just want to be able to have our voice
Yep.
amplified as theirs as well, just as much as theirs. And we know that sometimes it takes
Definitely.
some moolah to get there. So if you want to
Mhm.
help some sisters out, we'll let you know how you can. Um, but I think we should get into introducing our first episode. So we have been talking about this for a little while about dropping this episode. I'm so excited that we get to do this. We're doing it from different countries right now, which is exciting and part of, I guess the magic that is unapologetically Black. But we do want to talk about our first episode, which is going to be called Always Was, Always Will Be. It is NADOC week in Australia. And if you didn't know that, I'm
Mhm.
sorry, sis, that you're missing out.
Welcome.
It is NADOC in Australia. And that's what this episode's going to be all about.
Okay, so we're taking it to school. Your girl has her official link ready. So we have our nadoc.org.au link ready to go. If
Let's go.
anyone is intrigued to find out further information, because it is quite extensive, the role and the history of this chapter, and where we are today in relation to NADOC. So I'm not going to begin right at the beginning, because it kind of kicked off around the 1930s, or this I guess the need for Indigenous representation, or a peak body. But where I do want to, the chapter that I do want to begin is with the 1940s and around 1955 as well. So what originally was celebrated was not NAIDOC as we know today, but rather the Day of Mourning. So this was held the day before Australia Day and was known as originally as the Aborigines Day. So in 1955, Aborigines Day was shifted to the first Sunday in July, after it was decided the day should become not simply a protest day, but also a celebration of culture. So here we can see this big shift of things originally being about mourning and then later changing to be about celebration. And you may think, what were they mourning? This was obviously mourning that process of colonization and the many Indigenous lives that were lost, and the recognition of that, and understanding that it was a continued process as well, having this remembrance. And I would like to say that that's a sentiment that I believe is definitely being carried on with NAIDOC contemporarily, with paying respect to our ancestors, both past and present. So moving forward, as the decades have adapted and changed, that so has NADOC. But a common thread with the involvement of the government or their participation or recognition or not, this is an event that was created by Indigenous people for Indigenous people. This was created because there was nothing celebrating and recognizing our efforts and contribution to the country.
Mm.
Um, so in the by 1984, NAIDOC asked that the National Aborigines Day be made a national public holiday to help celebrate and recognise the rich cultural history that makes Australia unique. While this has not happened, other groups have also called for this to come to action. So as we know, so much change has happened over the last spanning decades, but unfortunately a lot has stayed the same. NAIDOC is not a public holiday. It is not a day that is called for everyone to participate, which it should be. So I think even reflecting on, it originally being a day of mourning and then the Aborigines Day, looking at it being a week now, 7 days, and the effort and the plight that our ancestors and people have put into making sure that this has been solidified in our country and our society as well. I hope that
was
made
just,
sense.
just listening to you. I was like, wow, like you said, a lot has changed in the coming decades. And I guess the way that we view NAIDOC now and what it looks like now is very different to how, I guess it started and what the whole, where NAIDOC originally came from. But like you said, a lot hasn't changed. We still don't have that day as a day or a week. I doubt we'll ever get a week, but there's no day, a public holiday for us as Blackfellas to be able to celebrate our culture and who we are and what that,
That's right.
and be able to share, because it's not just, when I think of NAIDOC as well, I think like it's an opportunity for us to be able to share with white Australia and the rest of Australia.
That's right.
And celebrate who we are and our culture, that we're the longest living, people in the world. So
Yeah. And even on the minute level, sis, like councils, right, guys? Councils around the whole entire country, they are responsible for dedicating a budget. They are responsible for dedicating an event, using a park, using these materials, calling on community, flyer, and all of these things. We have to recognize the visibility that it brings, because I feel like we take it for granted because it's kind of always been there. Like for me as an Indigenous woman, like whenever there's a NAIDOC event on, or I even just see one, which has happened, I've been in a community and just driven past it, and I had no idea that that suburb was having one on that date. That feeling, guys, there's no words to describe. Just seeing blackness being celebrated, seeing all different nationalities, everyone in that suburb recognize our presence there, if that makes sense. Our skill set and our food and our culture and our artistry, and we do not see enough of that. And I feel like NAIDOC Week is that opportunity to showcase it, and to, like I said, make sure the councils are doing what they need to do, make sure the facilities are there, the parks are involved, the PCYCs, or the whatever activities are available for the kids, getting them involved in services as well. So Centrelink and other elderly services that may be available, or mums and bubs groups, that's an opportunity for them to tap into other potential clients and community as well.
Right. And I think as well, like when we talk about NAIDOC having changed so much over the decades, I think as well, like in my 32 years of being in this life, I too have noticed a difference from when I was younger, what NAIDOC looked and felt like, to now. I think we're seeing there is look, a lot of it, sometimes I know people feel like a lot of it is very performative, and I can see that. I've definitely been involved in situations at work when I worked with different organizations, where you see these performative kind of ally patriotism actions sort of happen, and I think that that's something that we should talk about, how people today view NAIDOC, because I know that it is a contested conversation. A lot of people feel like NADOC is, like you said, like, just a performative way of the government, guess, making out like they care about who we are and what we're about. And then there's some people who feel like NADOC has become so integral to who we are and where we come from, but also the people before us, how integral NADOC has been a part of their lives. And so I think that's something that we should touch on, because I know that right now there's lots of conversations around whether we should be having NADOC or celebrating NADOC.
So yeah, even just touching on it, it being a really kind of hot topic right now, and it should be, mobs should be discussing. I'm so excited to see our community engaging with this conversation. So is NADOC worth investing in or continuing involvement or even recognition of? But even from my own perspective, though, someone that is likes to say, or I would like to think that I apply a critical lens to blackness or white society 365 days a year, really understanding, looking at this project or this moment for us from different perspectives, so understanding who, if we do boycott, or if we do not celebrate this week, or we do not get involved or stand in solidarity towards it, which is very feasible, who loses? Who are the ones that has a loss? And I feel like at this level and this current position where we're situated in the welfare state in this country, we need to look at it like that. And most importantly, guys, I would like to say we need to think about our kids, and especially being a mum, we need to think about those young ones and also the future generations that are non-Indigenous. For many of them, this is their only opportunity to engage with Indigenous Australia. You look at it whichever way you want. Maybe it's a black fella on Play School reading a goddamn book, but this is the only opportunity they will visibly acknowledge, learn about, see black voices. So what I would like to see, and I guess some of my sentiments today on this yarn, is really trying to evaluate more positive perspectives. I had a really good yarn with a family member this morning, and I was yarning to them about NADOC week, and they said, why boycott our event? Why don't we boycott their event? Like, we were laughing. I said, boycott Christmas, boycott Boxing Day, boycott the Queen's birthday,
or even boycott non-Indigenous NADOC celebrations. Don't show up.
Thank you. That's right. Don't turn up.
Yeah.
Don't. Because gala events, those big kind of pushing things where you pay money and, do that.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing is, like, for me, I went to the Murray School in Brisbane. NADOC was always super important. But again, I understand that whole concept of, like, yes, I am black every day of the year. And let me tell you, when I went to the Murray School, well, I'm always black 365 days a year. I was going to say I felt really black on those days. No, I always feel black. But the thing is, you don't talk about it like that when you're at the Murray School. When you're surrounded by black fellas, we're not all like, do you feel black today?
I know. Or how is your blackness going today?
Yeah, we don't ever talk like that. And I think that's the thing that we need to get better at, recognizing that sometimes we do. We don't need to tell people how black we are every other day of the week. We know you're preaching to the choir, sis. You are black. That's right. And I'm never going to ask you how black you feel today. Because however you spend your day, however you think, however you look, with the clothes you choose to wear, the person you speak to, that doesn't change your blackness in any way, shape or form. And whether you celebrate NADOC every day of the year or not doesn't change the fact that you are still black. But I will say this, after I went to the Murray School for, the good part of my childhood, I then went to a mainstream school where we were the only black family at our school. Gosh. And I will say, we never talked about, I never had to talk about, okay, we're the only black family at the school. I knew, I felt it.
That's right? So true. That's so true.
And for a long time, that transition from an independent black school going into a mainstream white school and having to wear a uniform and talk differently or feel like you have to talk differently, and
Yeah.
all these kinds of things, making friends that I never had white friends at
Yeah.
school, at the Murray school, I think, and then like having to make friends and what, following social norms and social
Mm,
cues for white fellas is so stark in contrast. It was so different. And for that transition was not the greatest for me, but I think once I started to feel grow and know that I am still Black despite where I am in the world or who
that's
I'm
so
talking to,
true.
then um celebrating NADOC week at school was one of the highlights of my year, right?
So
One
true.
year we had my uncle come in and do a mural, and I was so proud that he was my uncle standing there and talking to, all these other kids about what culture was. And I think like we just have to be careful when we say, and not, and just a thought, just make sure that
Mm,
when these words are coming out of your mouth, that there is perspective, right? For
mhm.
a lot of Black kids who are living in areas where they may be the only Black kid, or
That's right.
don't see themselves represented, like don't take this from them.
That's so true. That's such an important point. Don't
Eh,
take it away.
yeah, and just and validate that experience, that it's
Hmm.
going to be different for lots of different Black fellas. And I'm not saying at all that we shouldn't boycott NADOC, because I'm a ride or die bitch. If
Yeah,
like, I'm always going to do what's best for
here
Black
for it.
fellas, for the
That's right.
majority of Black fellas, and that's what culture is. Yeah.
That's right.
But I just think as well, like we have to appreciate that for some people, or for a lot of
Mm.
people, NADOC is a very important time in their lives. And I think as well as, I don't have kids, but I can imagine you're
Mm,
using NADOC to have these conversations with your baby. And
exactly. Yeah,
how will she navigate NADOC at
that's
school?
right. In the future,
Right.
exactly. And even kids that don't have access to their Indigenous parents or their communities, you fellas, this is their only opportunity to access Blackness. And of course, there is, exploitation and economic goals, and these white mega companies and these organizations and these individuals are going to exploit it. But guys, they exploit everything. They exploit our genius, our knowledge, our history, our past, our future, our deficit, our strengths. They exploit it. So NADOC is not going to be any different. And if we want to talk about exploitation, even within the Indigenous community. So if we're talking about figureheads, which I love to talk about,
Mhm.
this is another point we want to yarn about today, but figureheads utilizing their version of Blackness, which is, appropriate in white spaces, which is accepted in white spaces. If we're going to talk about exploitation, we have to bring it home. We have to talk about it in relation to our own mob. It's not going to work if we're looking at non-Indigenous folk to uphold these standards of, ethics and morals and accountability, and we have mob ripping off and exploiting each other, knowledge, art, styles,
Mm.
cultural appropriation, if it's false narratives or connectedness to specific topics. And
Right.
I'm not gonna pussyfoot around it. I want to say it for what it is. Talking about things like domestic violence or child removal or abuse or substance, anything which is very hard hitting and affects our communities deeply. We need to situate people in those conversations that have gone through it, not people that simply have opinions, if that makes sense. And I think,
Yeah. Or
you
or
know,
or are chosen because that's what feels and looks comfortable for our white audience. And I think as Black
mhm,
fellas, we know that when we're being used as
that's right.
tokenistic Black fellas for certain,
Hmm.
performative shows of whatever. And I think like that's just I guess one thing that I think we should
Hmm.
all do, and I try to do it as much as I can. Like I'm not a perfect person by any means, right? But there
Yeah,
have been situations that I've been in. I've worked in lots of different organizations and businesses, and when you're being used as a
that's
Black
right.
fella for NADOC or whatever. And I think
Hmm.
that's the point that I wanted to talk about. I think is creating a Black agenda. I think it's really easy sometimes
Yes.
for us to sit down and say like NADOC is stupid, or you know and I want to acknowledge as well that there are a lot of Black fellas in the country right now who hate NADOC week because it's so laborious, because they're the people at work who are become the head of the NADOC committee, or
That's right. Can you get an artwork together? Can you help us get a sculpture? Can you do a speech?
Yeah. And who's your auntie, that one that came in last year and she said, oh, if we could have her come, can you ask her? Like, we know what happened. So I want to acknowledge you. If that's you this year, I feel you, I hear you, I see you. I know what that feels like. Yes, I know what that feels like. But as well, I want to encourage you to step away from that, because we all have a choice. We all have a choice. We can choose to play in that space, and a lot of people like to do it, and that's fine as well. If you feel like that's what your calling is, to spread culture during NADOC, and that you want to be that person because then you know that it's authentic and real or whatever, do that. But if you don't, this is the mob that I want to talk to. If you really feel like what's happening in your workplaces, or if you're, in your suburbs, then we need to create a Black agenda.
Oh, yes.
We are silly to think that these mob don't have an agenda. They always have an agenda. These white mob have an agenda for everything. And now we need to show up with a Black agenda. Just, the fact, this year, obviously, NADOC is working very differently. It's not at the same time that it generally is, which is in July. NADOC, we've had NADOC in July for a very long time now.
That's right.
You know when it is. Plan accordingly.
You can't say you don't.
you can't say, unless there is a pandemic that is spreading across the world.
I know.
We know when it is every year. So I encourage you to put in your annual leave now.
Run for the hills.
Run for the hills. NADOC is, for a lot of people, it's different things. But for me, I always think NADOC is time to be spent with my friends and family.
Yeah.
It's time to be down at Musgrave Park in Brisbane. It's time to show up at the after parties. It's time to have a yarn, have a laugh, do what you need to do. I don't like to work during the NADOC week, so I will take the time off. And, white mob only start thinking about NADOC about July 1st. So put your annual leave in now.
Get
for next
prepared,
year, so that you take the time off and you're not spending time in this laborious role of organizing things and feeling like you're that Black for whoever you work for. So that's what I want to encourage mob to do. Take control of the situation. You know when NADOC week is.
Hell yeah.
And it is a choice. You can choose to be a part of that narrative, or you don't. And
step off the train.
Step off the train, that's it. And then enjoy NADOC for what it is, for what what it means for your aunts or your uncles or your grandmothers or your grandfathers or your great-grandmothers and grandfathers who didn't have access to the same sorts of things. And I'm not trying to dictate how you should spend NADOC. There are definitely years that I felt like this is some bullshit. But there is also those times in between when I've been able to relax and spend time with family and friends that I'm like, this is what NADOC is about. And here's the thing. Once you step off that train, they will either keep the train going.
That's right.
Or it doesn't. And then you know exactly where you stand.
That's right. You know how important of a passenger you are.
Exactly. Yes. Who's paying for the tickets? Yeah.
No, exactly. And it's all perception, sis. It is literally your perception. And that is something that Indigenous people in this country have been denied. Perspective, decision-making, autonomy, reflection, leave, capacity in the job space to make those types of decisions. You fellas, that's only like 1-2 generations. We have aunts and uncles that did not have the right to make decisions about the workplace, and unfortunately so many of our mob still don't. So reflect on that right to make those decisions, if that makes sense.
And I think just sometimes as Black fellas we can sit in that space of like feeling real angry. And for me, NADOC isn't about anger. And look, there's lots to be angry about. I think there's lots of things happening right now that deserve a lot of attention, and that, like I said, Black fellas, NADOC week is what you make of it. And if you feel like there are things happening in our country right now that deserve that attention, now is the time. It doesn't have to be all happy. Like, we should be talking about issues and things that are happening in the world right now that are super important to us. Use this as an opportunity to do that.
That's
as a
right.
vessel, a new train to jump on.
Hell yes, and you can drive it. And speaking of, sis, so I've got a bit of tea because you know me, I love
We love
to
tea.
apply the critical lens, you know me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm seeing a lot of these posts. Now, I want to be very crystal clear. I am being 100% respectful. There is no but. Like, you know how people say, I'm being respectful, but there's no but. I'm being respectful. We need to acknowledge that sacred sites have been destroyed since the arrival of arrival of the British, since colonization. Sacred sites have been destroyed every single year. Sacred sites or sacred land, this whole entire continent is sacred. So if they're making a new building, for example, in Sydney, you know, they have gone hard out with construction. Like, you have no idea with the big boom in buildings or apartments. So we have to acknowledge that Aboriginal land is being destroyed and disrupted and destructed regularly. Now, also with the Black deaths in custody, our people are dying 365 days a year, right? If it's Black deaths in custody, if it's premature or early death, you know, if it's the most preventable of causes, right? Or if it's high suicide rates that we have as a community, we need to recognize that it's not just 2020. It's not just 2020. Yeah, the date has changed. Maybe it's a bit more awkward. Maybe it's different now because we don't have the events. We don't have the after party. There isn't the buzz. We're not having access to culture. Because when I moved from the country and I came to Sydney, that was the thing that hit me so strong, was seeing visibly seeing large groups of Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander and or Torres Strait Islander people in a vicinity. Because in the country you see that more often because obviously it's where I was from had a larger Indigenous population. So what I'm trying to say is, now that buzz isn't there, so now we're not getting the pros of NADOC, we're just seeing the cons. Has that wavered your perception of wanting to participate in NADOC? Because let me tell you, these things are going to keep happening. These disgusting and terrible things what our people are going through, along with the exploitation, it is going to keep happening until we sit down and talk about what is exactly happening and strategies to prevent it and overcome it, and accountability. But while we're, you know, iffing and moving back and forth of boycotting or not supporting or feeling this or feeling that, that is not conducive. That is not helping us move forward. That is not being realistic. And most importantly, guys, you need to honor those feelings. So if you are feeling sad, if you are feeling like I can't do NADOC, let's really dig deep and acknowledge why you can't do NADOC this year, but how and why could you do NADOC the year before? I said what I said.
So
I
true.
said what I said.
So true. I think we are, like you said, we're seeing a lot of people feeling some kind of way because we're not having that same access to our normal NADOC that we're used to.
That's right.
But yeah, you can't pick and choose when it works for you. I think that's the
so
thing.
now there's no after party. NADOC's not a vibe, or now you can't go to the different event in this suburb and that suburb. It's not a vibe anymore. Like now it's shit. It's always been shit. Our position in this society is going to keep being shit until we mobilize, like you were saying, have an agenda. Until we start doing that, it's not going to get any better. It's just going to continue to get worse, and that's what's been happening.
And I think that's the thing is, you know, like I find with black fellas as well, when I talk to other black fellas, like I know a lot of people feel like they can't, you know, there's definitely certain people who are better for the conversation. And I understand that. And where possible, if I think if I've been used, I always use my position as best as I can to, you know, move someone else into that space, because that's what black fellas do. But also I know a lot of black fellas feel like they can't say something, or they can't have a you know, a differing in perspective. And that's when, with stuff like this, you actually do. We're not asking you to become Prime Minister of Australia. You don't get to speak on behalf of all of us. But what we are saying is, we all make choices in our everyday lives that you do have a say in. You do. it's not all doom and gloom. You can
Mhm.
choose to not be a part of NADOC. You can choose not to be a part of that narrative. But I guess my biggest thing is choose something that you do and can be
Want
a
to
part
celebrate.
of and want to be a part of and celebrate. Yeah. And that's
And
what
why
it
are
is
you
about.
picking NADOC? Exactly, Ginny. Why are you boycotting NADOC? Why are you not boycotting Christmas? Or why are you not boycotting another big Australian event? Or I don't know, Anzac Day. Why are we choosing
None of
to
those days are our days, by the way.
No, but we're
Yeah.
choosing to boycott a specific event that was fought and lobbied by our own people to mourn the loss or to mourn our current predicament in this country, and then later adapted to celebrate us. It's always been by us. The whole entire NAIDOC board is black, you fellas. The theme is decided by black fellas. The artwork is a black artist. It is decided by black people. You know, we have NAIDOC awards, we have all of these opportunities for mobilizing. Why boycott us? What is that really saying? And why are you using this opportunity as a vehicle to speak about your unhappiness or unjust, and rightly so? But why this event, if that makes sense? Yes, the government has sunken their fangs into this, but they've sunken their fangs into everything, you know,
Yeah.
literally everything, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And what are you going to do about it?
That's right. What are you
Because
gonna do?
it's okay, like you said, rightly so.
Mm-hmm.
If you feel like NAIDOC is not what it's meant to be,
Mm-hmm.
then choose something else, do something else, um you know talk about something else, use it as an opportunity
Mm-hmm.
to pass the mic on to someone, like
That's right. Someone else that wants to get involved. Yeah.
yeah. And I just think, like, for me, well, um I guess, like you, I try and think of perspective as much as I can. So I totally understand black fellows who
Yeah.
I don't want anyone to don't at me with the, oh, you mob, or just whatever.
No.
Don't at me, because I see it, I understand it, I get it. But
Mm-hmm.
here's the thing. NAIDOC for me is when we go down to Brisbane, Musgrave Park in Brisbane, which is, I just want to say, I don't know about other big cities and their NAIDOC days on what that looks like, but Brisbane is lit. Okay.
I've heard.
Brisbane goes off.
Apparently it's just legendary.
Legendary. Like, I
That's what I've
can't
heard.
imagine what it's like in other cities, because ours is just the bomb, is the best. But it is my grandmother. Like, when she goes to NAIDOC and she sits there and she spends a whole day watching and listening to every single person, we see every single member in our family, whether it's
So
been,
beautiful.
it's the only time you get together outside of funerals, and
It's true.
it's fun, and it's not,
It's so true.
like, let's not take that from people. Let's not take
No.
that from our grandmothers who
No.
fought for us to have this.
That's right.
Let's
They
not
didn't have this day when it didn't look like this for them when they were growing up.
No.
You know, we need to think
Boundary
about
Street was all the way around Brisbane. They wouldn't have even been allowed in that space. So we just have to take, I know it's hard, but we have to take these little wins. It does look very different. It does look very different. And I think we should be grateful, not from white fellas, but from our ancestors, for our elders, the people who fought for us to have this week. We should be grateful for them. And then if we don't like the way that it looks, then we need to mobilize and have a black agenda and put that agenda to the forefront of everyone's mind. When NAIDOC week is every single year. Plan.
That's right.
Start yarning about it now, because it's going to come up real quick.
It'll be there in no time. And if we are boycotting it, guys, like Ginny said, I am all for it. Like, you cannot look at Ginny and my content and be like, these girls are on the fence. These girls aren't down with it. Like, you just look at our content. And as we reveal more of ourselves through these podcasts, we are here for it. But we have to understand the ramifications. There are two more points, and I guess they're intertwined. But my next point of discussing NAIDOC is the idea of tokenism. So we kind of talked about exploitation, this, that, and the other, and people seeing it tokenistic. But we have to understand, guys, we will always be seen as tokens. We will always be token this, will always be diversity, will always be, we're involved with low socioeconomic backgrounds, we'll always be like this. And you want to know why we're always going to be like this? Because the welfare state or the country, the government, whatever you want to call it, will always have their inferiors. We will always be subordinate. We will always be lesser than. We will never be the elites in this country. We will never be worthy or validated. And that is how they've situated us. That is the narrative that they're spreading, that they're sharing. And until we really recognize this concept of tokenism and how deeply embedded it is in this country, tourism, for example, NADOC, beauty industry, art, all of it, until we really look at it, at the landscape, it's not going to get anywhere. It's just going to really become divisive. And then my final point, and Ginny, I'm sure you can speak to this as well, being an artist, is the opportunity it has. The opportunity. Me and myself, my sister, a long time ago, we were in a little group. We used that sing and my sister played the guitar. So we were artists. We were young, 18, 19-year-old artists. NAIDOC Week was our opportunity. It was our opportunity to get out there and perform and be paid and have money in our little pockets. So we have to recognize, guys, the economic opportunity that this week holds for our people. Now, you may not be worried. You may have your job. You may have money, but I have been that one. That was the 18, 17-year-old girl. My parents had no money. And my little gig was, a highlight of my goddamn month or my year. So we need to recognize the opportunity for us to share our culture, our intellect, knowledges, but also earn some money, if that makes sense.
Totally. I totally, and you're right. And I think right now we're seeing, we were yarning about this earlier, is that, it is NAIDOC week. So I'm seeing an influx of followers on my Instagram, which I think is funny. It's deadly. I shouldn't complain, but it's funny because these are like I guess now everyone's like, oh, it's NAIDOC week. Let's follow some black fellas online. Let's do our part and share and rah, 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 rah. And look, for me, it feels performative.
Yeah.
It feels performative, but I think that social media, I think it's hard for things to come across as not performative, especially in this time right now. But for a lot of black fellas, this is going to be their bread and butter. This is how they're
true.
They are making money, they're feeding their families, and this is what's going to carry them through. And I think you're right. I think that's the thing, is like when we go into situations like this, I am down for the cause, whatever that looks like, whatever's best for the mob.
Yeah, hell yeah.
But let's make sure we're thinking of everyone, not just ourselves. We're thinking of everyone, what that looks like. Because I know like in Brisbane, it's so large. You have all these mob down there, all the little Torres Strait Islander stalls, and they're cooking, aunties, making sop and all the rest. Like, let's not take this from them.
No,
I'm down. I don't pay whatever it costs, because this is an economic opportunity for a lot of black fellas. And I think like what we can do, as if we feel like it's not representing who we are, then we change the narrative. Let's not wait and ask the white mob to change the narrative, because we know they don't care. That's not
and they can't take NAIDOC from us. I'm not going to let white people or gubbers take goddamn NAIDOC.
No.
Can't imagine what it'd be like. Imagine how sad it would be. They can take anything else.
I've seen it. I've seen some really white run events and NAIDOC events, and think, Jesus, they really hit the mark on this one. But yeah, I just think like, if you're feeling this way, so you should. If that's how you feel, that's how you feel. You're valid. Your experience is valid. Your feelings are valid.
Yep.
But let's change the narrative. Let's turn it into something else. Let's create a NAIDOC week outside of NAIDOC week,
Yeah.
And wherever you feel like, use it as an opportunity to create some change. That's where great ideas come from.
That's right. And we've got Survival Day, or, in Sydney, we celebrate Yarbin. So that's coming up in no time, guys. And obviously with COVID, we don't know what that's going to look like, but start preparing, let's start yarning. Let's start talking about channeling that energy, because that exploitation is still going to be there. Exploitation, white participation or involvement, or the tokenism that will happen to NAIDOC will happen to Survival Day in Yarbin. We have to understand that, these things are common in a capitalist society. These elements are what has been a part of Western civilization since the beginning of time. It's new for us, but we need to figure it out. And speaking of figuring it out, guys, let's call to these figureheads. Let's call to these people that are on media. Let's call to these fellas that are athletes or are journalists or are, social media stars, whatever they are, or actors and actresses. Let's call for our mob to talk about the tokenism that's in NADOC. Let's start calling for them to start having these conversations and not just participating in the conversations that make white people comfortable.
Right, exactly. So the next thing that I think we really should talk about is what's happened in the news as of late, because we definitely weren't expecting to talk about this. However, it's just popped up, and I think it's something that we definitely need to yarn about. It's something that we need to talk through, because I am just, when you think
I know.
you've hit the lowest of lows, we then enter the Parliament House of our representatives. Apparently, these people are meant to represent Australia, and we've just been hit with some bullshit.
Mm-hmm. So, unless you are living under a rock, well, we wanted to let you know, in case you are, the government has voted against Labor's motion to hang the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander flags in Parliament. So this motion was pushed forward and it has been denied right in the middle of NAIDOC week. Now, our 2020 has been horrendous. It has been a pandemic. Our communities have been shut off. The fear in remote and rural communities with limited access to healthcare and health services, obviously being more at risk of COVID. All of the magic that has brought, and then obviously the destruction of not one but two but multiple sacred sites. um this is just really the cherry on top. But again, guys, representative of what this government thinks. It is very strategic, and like you said, Ginny, there is an agenda, guys. There is an agenda happening, and it's a great indicator of what the Morrison government thinks of Indigenous people, guys. This is representative of what our Prime Minister thinks of its First Nation populations. Many countries involve their languages of First Nation people, colors or imagery that is important to them. Ours can't even hang our flags, let alone include us in the national anthem.
Mm.
It's a lot to process. It is a lot to process. And again, guys, I think it is very poignant because it represents the importance of NAIDOC Week. It represents the importance of the necessity of having a week that is so unapologetically Black, has all of this imagery of these flags and visibility. So it's indicative of what the government thinks of us. I think it is more representative of why we need to have NAIDOC. We need to have visibility. We need to have our flags in these banks, in these businesses. We need to have dedicated luncheons, guys. So we have luncheons, right, at government or non-governmental services where they have to attend or they have to participate or support the notion of having an Indigenous speaker, guys. That is decolonization. Let's really look at it for what it is. Having Black voices, Black faces in these spaces, our schools, our institutions, our juvenile centers. Guys, let's look at the populations of people that can't speak. Prisons, juvenile centers. I've been at not one but two NAIDOC events within a juvenile center, and let me tell you, the buzz, the energy, the pride of those children, and I'd arguably like to say the same for prisons or jails, that has ramifications for those collectives and those groups. And that's what we need to start reflecting on, because this country is racist. This country wants us to be invisible. And I'd like to say, with not our enthusiasm, or without our passion or drive or call for action that comes with solidarity that comes from NAIDOC Week, that is what they want.
Right, for sure. And I think you're right in that what we're seeing, it definitely wasn't surprising. I wasn't
have to
surprised by
agree,
any
sis.
means.
I'm not shocked. I have to say that exactly with you, Ginny. This is not a shock. This does not rock my boat. This is
No,
not going to make me cry or keep me up at night, honey. If they're killing us,
no,
they're sure as hell not going to want to put our flags up in their little
right.
house.
And I think that's the thing is that I don't think if you're a black fellow, if you've seen this, I
Mm,
mean, you wouldn't be shocked.
no.
But I think, again, I want to give a shout out to Sissy Lydia Thorpe, who stood up. I just saw a
Yay.
little bit of that, and I'm going to go back and listen after this, but who stood
Mm,
up and had courage
oh,
and
yeah.
bravery to stand up in a room full of racists, because that's what it
That's
was,
right.
and tell them how she felt and where they were, that they were on stolen land, unceded land,
Mhm.
and that's what they chose to do today. And we're seeing that a lot of that, this should be shared everywhere. I think
That's right.
I think Sissy Lydia is the only person who has something online at the moment, because everyone
Mm,
else in that room should be ashamed of themselves. Um,
literally.
but again, yeah, not surprised. And I think we as a community need to come behind Lydia and show her some love over
That's
these
right.
few days, because that we know as well, when we're put in, maybe not such a huge situation, but that is exhausting in itself, and she needs us to rally around her and show
That's
her
right.
some support. So I encourage everyone to do that. But yeah, not surprised, not shocked. These institutions, every institution that you see right now around you, that you interact with, whether it's health or justice or the foster care system, are not built for us. They're not built
No.
with us in mind. They're not
Mhm.
there to uplift us. So we would be silly to think that today
Mhm.
they were going to choose to do anything different.
So true.
But again, brings me back to having our own agenda. We are not dumb people. We
That's
can
right.
mobilize. We can come together. We have made things happen before. And I think that when we come together and put our own Black agenda together, and it's something that we all collectively feel like we're a part of, it's then that we hope to see some change. But I am disgusted in the Australian government, just not surprised. I've been disgusted. 32 years of being disgusted. Motherfucker.
Still counting.
Counting now. Yeah, just when you thought,
No.
and I think that's the thing, is like, I know there's lots of stuff happening around the world right now. I'm in the US, so I'm feeling and seeing lots of things happen over here, and we were talking about earlier today as well, like there is a correlation between what's happening here and in other parts of the world. And I think that while it is 2020 and you hope that people are a little bit more progressive and a little bit have a little bit more perspective, that we have access to shitloads of information, more than we ever have right now, that you would just hope that people would think about these sorts of things and have some perspective. But we know that that's not true right now. Everyone has their own agenda, and we just have to come together and push and mobilize and push our agenda to the forefront.
That's right.
But yeah, I feel for Sissy Lydia right now.
So
And
much power to face that, though, to actually have to process that, guys, is really traumatizing, and we have to really recognize that she has to even say those words is so traumatizing in recognition. And I guess one of my last points, guys, I want to make about NADOC is, like anything in life, guys, anything that is created or anything that is implemented, especially by Black hands, our whole ideology is around us participating, us maintaining, if it's taking care of the land, if it's our culture, if it's our children or our people. It's not something that you just walk away, you plant or you water and you just leave it. No, you tend to it, you watch it, and you assist it where it needs to be. And that's the same thing with NADOC, guys. We can't expect our 60, 70, 80 years ago when NADOC was created, or the day of mourning, or the Aborigine Day, we can't expect that to be okay in 2020. We have to contribute. You know, we have to do the hard yard. We have to do the planning, the reevaluation, the conversation with white people or with white Australia, because that's where our qualms are. They are in charge. They are making the decisions. It is our responsibility to follow in our ancestors' footsteps. And if white Australia doesn't want to come on and get involved, we have the responsibility now to get the involvement and participation of the rest of this country. And I would like to say that they will invest and they will hear us once we are provided the opportunity for those discussions to happen. So NADOC is not perfect. It's not timeless. It's not, going to be the same thing in my daughter's generation or her children's generation. It is going to be evolving much like our people. And it's very easy to provide critiques or, be more pessimistic. But what I'm calling for my brothers, sisters, and non-gender binary folk is to really mobilize and imagine and reimagine what NADOC could look like for us and adapt it to our current welfare state. As ugly, as mean, as bitter as it is, let's make NADOC something that we can celebrate.
That we can all celebrate and be a part of. I totally agree. And I think that's exactly what it is. We just need to come together, create our agenda. And I think it's like, remember when you used to, I don't know, at school when birthday parties, and you just kind of hoped you'd get an invitation, like, I wonder if she's going to invite me to the party. There's enough of us to start our own party.
That's right.
There's enough of us to push. We've got Black people in spaces that we never thought we'd see.
That's right.
We've got Black people in every industry. I don't care what anyone says. We are everywhere. Let's utilize that and start pushing. Yep. Let's start moving. Let's come together and create our own agenda. We need to do it. Right. I am not ever going to sit around and ask another white fella for nothing ever again. That is one thing that
Time is over now.
It's over, and we can't expect them to read our minds. They don't care about our minds.
They don't give a rat's ass.
No. So I just think, I think that's, I would love to see more Black fellas in that parliament space. We need to start moving in that direction, to have some real say. And it's unfortunate because I know there's Black fellas that are like, fuck the system. It's not for us. And I get that too. It's not for us.
No, it's not.
But this is where we're at. This is where we're at right now. And I think that we need to encourage people like Lydia and other Black fellows who are in that space, make sure that they feel like we have their back, and then push in those spaces. Because if
we're about to boycott NADOC, we need to be boycotting NRL games. Okay, we need to be boycotting State of Origin. We need to be boycotting, like I
Parliament House.
Parliament House. We need to be celebrating, boycotting Christmas.
Right.
Queen's birthday, you name it. We need to, if we're going to boycott, if we're going to do this and go against the man and go against the system, which we need, to do, let's be strategic and let's think about what is most impactful. And if anything, Australia loves its goddamn NRL. So that's my 2 bobs worth.
And that's my 2 cents worth they're giving. But yeah, and I think that's the other thing. One more last thing. Athletes. Social media stars, models, we're everywhere. I hope that you're utilizing your platform this week. And if you don't love NADOC week, then I hope you're talking about the things that we can work on and change, and talk about all of the things that deserve the attention of the mainstream media right now. If someone wants to just talk on it, because all the eyes are on us, and it's not going to be here for very long.
No,
because we know that's how that works. It is NADOC week right now. Utilize your platform, share, spread the message, talk about all of the things, Black deaths in custody.
That's right.
Whatever it is that you choose to talk about this week, make sure that that's your narrative. Don't let anyone take that from you. And however you spend your NADOC week, I hope that it's one that isn't full of labor, and that you find time to spend time with your family and friends and have a laugh, and be grateful for those who came before us, that they paved the way for us to have such a week and
Oh,
think of
yes.
those people and your babies when they go to school, and how they'll be viewed this week at school during NAIDOC week, and how it might be a difficult space for them to navigate as well. They need our
That's
love
right.
and support.
That's
And so,
exactly right. Check in,
however,
guys.
check in. Yeah, however you spend NAIDOC,
Yeah.
we hope that it's one of rest and
Yes.
love
And
always.
be sure to check out the nadoc.org.au, guys. This is their official, I guess, content page. It has a variety of different links, NADOC history, their partners, helping you assist, plan your event, access to the posters and the themes, wards, resources. So get into it. Let's really evaluate NADOC, what it is, and, the opportunities that it has for the entire country.
And thank you for joining us again on our episode of Unapologetically Black. We hope you enjoy this. If you did, please, do all of the things, the Murray grapevine or the blackfella grapevine, send it out, and let us know your thoughts and opinions on how you feel about NAIDOC Week. We definitely want to hear some perspective, and yeah, let us know what you think. And if there's anything else that you'd love to talk about, or you have any comments, then send those to us as well. But thank you for joining us. I can't believe we're here. Happy NAIDOC, Q-Mob. But yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks, guys.